Good afternoon. I am here with Justin Rowland, and he is running for school board at large. And that means that any and everyone in the county can vote for you, right?
Correct.
All
Yes.
right. So I brought you here today. I had seen Justin at the Women's GOP meeting on Saturday, and I was just so wowed with you. uh, um, it's amazing. When he stood up, should I tell this? This is funny.
Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering why we had a kid at the GOP meeting. But he's not a kid. He looks young for his age, and Justin, you have put a lot of years in to get to 27.
27. Yes, ma'am.
27. So, share your background a little bit with the Pcom audience because I really was bowled over with your accomplishments. Could you mind telling the people a
Sure.
little bit about your background?
Well, I've been a resident of Paulding County for 25 years, and I went through the Paulding County school system from K to 11th grade.
Mhm.
I had the opportunity to be what's called a dual enrollment or a freshman scholar student, and I enrolled at Jacksonville State University in Alabama, and I completed that for my senior year. Um, and then I graduated in 2003 as a sophomore in college. So, and that was a very unique experience, and I learned a lot from that. Um, when I came back, I enrolled in Kennesaw State University, and that's where I completed my studies a couple years ago, and I have a Bachelor's of Business Administration in Finance and Business Law.
Mhm.
And through getting my education at Kennesaw State University, I've worked with Cobb County government and state court administration for the past going on 8 years in our probation department. So I work with misdemeanors, teenagers and adults that get drug charges, violation of Controlled Substance Act, or drinking, DUIs, and stuff like that. And then through our state court, I have had involvement with the alcohol and drug program in the Cobb County school system. So I did that for 4 years. So I've been involved in the school system, but just not Paulding County school system, and I've gotten to work with kids, and also on my extracurricular activities, I work with kids as well through my spiritual living center.
Okay, so that brings us to the next question: is why the school board? I mean, you're a little bit young. We usually don't see people so young running for political office. So, are you aspiring to be a politician, or are you just specifically interested in changing some things within the school system this way?
hmm well, that's a very good question. Thank you. One of the inspirations that I've had is also with working with the kids.
Uh-huh.
That's where you can mold your society is through children.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand that a lot of your tax dollars siphon through the Board of Education, and it's
Yep.
very important on how to allocate that money.
Right.
Um, and I enjoy working with children. Of course, in the business that I am in, I see children making mistakes all the time, and that all they lacked is just a loving person that is there to guide them and show them and be an example.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't say I'm not aspiring to be a career politician, but it's a great place to start in a good community. It's just small enough to make a difference and big enough to really make a change.
Okay. So that brings us to some things that you feel are critical, and there's a few things that we look at, and I think what I want to start with is when we talk about making a difference in a child's life, and you talked about the tax dollars. Do you believe that there is any correlation between the amount of money spent per student and the ultimate outcome of that child, whether they graduate, whether they go on to college? Do you think the dollar amount really makes a difference?
It's very hard for me personally to put a dollar amount to a child's education.
Hmm.
I think as the child goes through school, and it really should be about just the education. and I understand that there's a dollar amount that's put to it. Obviously, we're realizing that it might be a little bit wasteful spending as far as the kids' well-being is concerned. But I think the correlation with the money is it's hard to put the quality with the money
Okay.
with the students.
Okay. But I'm assuming that you could get to, if you bring it down too far, you're just, or start beginning to do away with the needed personnel if you
Oh, right,
trim that
right.
budget, because I think that the quality of the educator has a lot to do
Hmm.
with ultimately the outcome. So that brings us to really something that you are kind of involved in, which is the disciplining of students. And I know that really this is a whole this is everybody says this is the issue,
Hmm.
is without discipline and organization in the classroom is the kids can't learn. Tell me a little bit about your viewpoint on discipline, because I'm assuming that you see the end result of improper, I would say, discipline. So can
Hmm.
you tell me a little bit about how you feel about that?
Well, what I see in a day-to-day basis with the discipline with kids, and when I was in high school, it was a little bit different than it is now. It's a little bit more involved as far as the local authorities are considered.
Hmm.
I see a lot of kids that come in and they tarnish their records so early, and I believe all they need is a little bit more guidance
Hmm.
in school, with school counselors, with teachers, people that they look up to. And I think they just need to be redirected. I don't think that slamming them behind bars, uh, the only thing that's doing is getting them used to the sound and the sight and the smell and everything to do with what it is to be in jail, and you don't want to be here, because I can tell you that just putting people in jail doesn't work. They get used to it, and it's just like that's their life, and that it's normal to them. And I don't want to ever put a child through that kind of normalcy as far as this is going to be normal in your life. I think a lot more guidance.
And I wanted to get you to maybe to define child. I do sometimes when I
Mm.
talk to people, and in my mind, and having raised four children to adulthood, to me, an 18-year-old is a child.
Mhm.
Um, they are still apt to make some pretty severe mistakes at that age.
Mhm.
So I wanted to know how to, because you deal with people that really aren't considered children anymore, right?
Mhm. Right.
Because they're on probation.
Mhm.
So do you think something should change, that there is something intermediate between child and being convicted and treated as an adult? Do you believe that there could be some changes?
Well, one of the main arguments that I've heard over the years is by law at 18, you are considered to be an adult,
Mhm.
and you are able and willing to make decisions for your own life, because you no longer have your parents there to help you. They can't sign for you on anything. So you have to have discernment
Right.
at that age of between what is right and what is wrong, and making good decisions. So as a parent and as educators, that is the opportunity that you have to educate children. And that's what the alcohol and drug awareness programs do in our school system. And I think it's a great program. Um, but at that age, it's also taking responsibility.
Yes, yes, and that I do. I'm not saying
Yeah.
they shouldn't be held responsible, but I'm with you. I don't want to see their lives ruined with records and that kind of thing at that age. So let's go backwards a little bit, and I think this is, we think more with some of these issues. We think more about children in the lower grades, and I know that you are very, very interested in the nutrition program. We know that we do have issues with the nutrition program. Some things are being tried, some things are being kicked out as something that won't work. Where would you be with the nutrition program for our children?
Um, Through the school system, I was brought up the same way that kids are now. You go to the cafeteria and you don't think of anything about nutrition except you look at that pizza and you want to eat it.
Yeah.
because that's what you get at home. Um, I've done some extensive research, and I'm part of a wellness. I'm a part-time wellness consultant for a company about nutrition and wellness and living the whole life, and that includes teaching children from a young age about nutrition. And some people may be familiar with Jamie Oliver's Food Revolution. He tried to go into a school system and completely revamp the whole thing, and you have to reteach kids because they're so used to, what they're getting either at home and at school, or it's opposite. They're getting good at home, but they're not getting so good at school.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just it's an imbalance. There's a disconnect right there. And so I want to bring the nutritional education or revamp the nutritional education in the school
So
system
you
to
feel
teach.
like a child's knowledge of food will direct their eating habits rather than to come in and tell a child, no, you can't have
Right.
this, or
Right.
yes, you can have that.
Mhm.
So you're more for educating the child about nutrition and what's
Right. And in turn, the child educating the parents.
exactly. So I'm a big proponent of solid nutritional information that goes beyond a poster on the wall of the food pyramid.
Right.
And, you know, I guess it's okay, but there's not a lot of detail in there about why and that kind of thing. So that brings us to another huge thing that we have going on now in the schools, and we're very aware that the numbers on autism are increasing, and we know that our school system has to address this, and we know we have children that the deficit is at such a level that's not questionable whether they should ever be mainstreamed. It's just not a possibility. But we also have parents that say, okay, you have an autistic child, or maybe even you have one that has severe emotional problems, and they're borderline. They do have the capability to learn, but they're not always functioning the way the other students are in the classroom as far as behavior. So how do you see the school system addressing that, and even well into the future, because the numbers are so large on those things?
Well, one of the things with teachers is that they can be trained, and some of them are, uh, to point out these students that have. I mean, I wouldn't say special needs, but they have, uh, an issue that needs to be addressed. I mean, they're not like all the other kids. They're not special, and they're not incapable of doing what a normal child could do. They just need a little bit extra of attention, maybe a little different way of teaching, and really just embracing. I mean, it's. I don't think they're in any way incapable of doing anything that a regular student could do. And
Right.
again, parents do a lot of their own research,
Right.
and parents can educate the teachers, and
Sure.
sometimes the teachers can educate the parents because sometimes parents don't see it either,
Yes, I know.
and they don't realize it, and they just think they don't know what's wrong with their child, but they know that there's something that needs to be done, and maybe need to be altered in their education.
So really, you are, and we know that our class sizes have increased, and this is, there, there's some problems that money absolutely will solve,
Mhm.
and that would be lower class sizes and more teachers. So do you think the money is better spent on the teacher rather than on a different, a completely different facility for these types of children?
Well, I think in the current situation, um, there's I think a few things that take precedence over creating a new facility,
Hmm.
because I think we're very well within our means to create this, because honestly, these kids live all over the county.
Right.
Where and how big and how elaborate it would be to be, you know, functional for these kids. I mean, they're in every public school that we have.
Yes.
And I think that we need to re-educate our staff.
Okay.
Maybe teach the educators to about autism. Some
Mhm.
don't know about autism. Like we did years ago when my brother was in school, they didn't know about ADD.
Mhm.
they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And they just classified him as something, special needs is how they put it.
Right.
But they didn't know how to deal with it. But with more information, you know
Exactly.
better, you do better.
Right. Right. Because I'm sure there are
Yes.
people that are studying the field, and they are
Right.
starting to come up with solutions and ways and means of dealing with all kinds of problems with
Right.
children. So I know a lot of parents are really interested in how this is going to be addressed for their children. Um, Another thing that I was going to ask you about is, and this is a big question for everybody. In fact, this is the gotcha question, and it can be for many people that are running for office, and that is school choice.
School choice,
School
yes.
choice. We're going to talk about school choice.
Um, Coming from a business standpoint and a little lesson in economics, as you increase competition,
Hmm.
it's known that you get better quality out of your product.
Right.
And so you're not monopolizing the school system and subsidizing it, which is, of course, obviously our current situation.
Right.
Um, Parents like to have the choice, or like to know they have the choice in their child's education. Nobody likes being told what to do, ever.
Mhm.
And school choice is taking the kid's education back into the control of the parents,
Right.
instead of people who really don't know your children at a personal level like you do.
Right.
And it has, and the public school system has forced people to go towards private schools,
Right.
and people will sacrifice that, and they already pay taxes,
Yes.
and they
Yes,
are actually
do.
paying an additional amount to send their kids for a quality education,
Exactly.
for which we
Exactly.
can create. But we have, as
Yeah.
every corporation or every business or government entity, money.
Yes, and that has always been, I guess, with school choice has always been one of the biggest questions that I have about it, because the only reason that we would ever even consider this option would be that we're going to get better quality of education for children.
Mhm.
So, who is going to decide what is what private school will be the one to receive the funds? I mean,
Mhm.
what standards will they come up to? Because somebody, for me, for me to agree to it, I have to see somebody setting the standards for a private school, because I don't want to see private schools cropping up on every street corner, and our government trying to control to make sure that the kids are getting the education that they are supposed to in the private schools and in the public schools.
Mhm.
So, do you think that that's going to when you begin to bring in charter schools and school choice, are you really going to take money away from the kids for another level of bureaucracy of oversight of charter schools?
Well, I mean, I continue to do research on the charter school system, and I've been
Mhm.
approached by several organizations that have educated me on it. I continue to do research about it because I'm not fully sure on how the functionality of it's going to work
Right.
in the merging between the boards and having the private schools.
Exactly.
But the idea is that your money will follow your child,
Right.
and that you have a choice in that. And and charter schools do have they have their own minimum standards, which
Right.
I think, in my personal opinion, sometimes far exceed
Yes,
what we
and
have
I
in
know-
public
yes.
standards anyway. So I mean, I don't see that being an issue,
Okay.
because I do believe that in some ways private education is not better, but it's more accomplished than the public school has the potential to be.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
because you
But it's
don't have
all in
as
the
much-
students as well.
Yes, you don't have as much bureaucracy. Well, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to introduce you to the people of Paulding that will hopefully be voting in a few short weeks. And they can absolutely reach you. I believe that you are doing your campaigning through a Facebook page.
Yes.
And it is Jason Rowland.
Justin Rowland.
Justin Rowland for
BOE Paulding.
BOE Paulding.
Yes.
So you actually, your Justin Rowland personal page will come up,
Right.
but if you put BOE Paulding behind it, you'll be able to go to his official page and ask him questions. That's one of the biggest things, is you want people to ask you questions on that Facebook page.
Yes.
And are you planning any meet and greets where we're out in the public where people can just come up and meet you?
I've been invited to many of the organizations. I'm a part of the Paulding County GOP.
Okay.
I've been invited to this weekend's gathering,
Okay.
and then a few other gatherings. And I just go and mesh with all the other candidates
Yeah,
and
so
meet and
that's out
greet.
at, they're having a barbecue out at one of the parks.
Yes,
So I'm not sure which park that is. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
White
Uh,
Oak, I believe.
White Oak Park.
White Oak,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, they are, and I believe a lot of our candidates will be out there, and Justin's going to be out there, and I hope you get out to meet him. I am very impressed, and I think he will do a very good job on our school board.
Thank you.
Welcome.